Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading of Ghost Takes a Vacation by Carmen Radtke, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me. Chapter 1. Dazzling sunshine made me whip out my sunshades, but not even the dark lenses could dim the moment. Could there be anything more breathtaking than the pastel-colored palazzi and turquoise waters of Italy, where dashing, toga-clad Romans had sped past in horse-drawn chariots, noble ladies had reclined in the garden of their villas, and even today fast cars, beautiful women, and a zest for life ruled every inch of this sun-spoilt country. Watch your step. My companion wrinkled her lovely nose. We stared pointedly at the group of scantily dressed women wobbling on high heels who had trouble staying upright as they straggled to the pier. One of them bumped into me. At the last second, I succeeded in dragging my suitcase out of the way. Sorry, the woman slurred and traipsed after her friends, who at 2 p.m. were boozed up and on the brink of happy oblivion, or searching for the next shrub to be sick in. We'd run into a British hen party. This was not the introduction to the old world I'd intended for Adriana after a sea journey where I'd relegated her to our cabin as much as I could, but surely things would improve. They did. Our hotel room overlooked one of the many canals Livorno enjoyed. It had a 4-poster bed fit for a queen and a sofa that could easily double as a sleeping space for Adriana. Not that Adriana did much sleeping, if she nodded off at all. We stood by the window, every single blonde hair on her head perfectly waved, and her evening dress as unwrinkled as it had been when we boarded the ocean liner in Boston. I, on the other hand, could do with a freshen up. But I was only your average 32-year-old jewelry maker, whereas Adriana Darling was a glamorous beauty whose charms would never fade. Literally. She had died in 1929 when she was a decade younger than present-day me. Adriana was my great-great-aunt, and since she had returned from wherever that was about a month ago, she'd become my constant companion and sometimes guardian angel. She also turned my whole existence upside down. A loud meow interrupted my train of thought. On the small balcony, a cat sat and pressed her paws against the French door. Let her in, my great-great-aunt had said. I hesitated. Please? Only if you make sure she respects the furniture, I said. My budget doesn't stretch to pay for scratch marks. She'll be fine. I opened the French door, and the cat streaked in and chirruped at my great-great-aunt. Adriana stroked her, and the cat chirruped louder. Among her other talents, my great-great-aunt is fluent in cat, dog, and whatever other animal she's communicating with. I might be the only human who can see her, but animals notice her with the same enthusiasm mosquitoes show me, which is a lot. She said to our visitor, "Don't worry, my lovely. I'm sure Genie will find something to eat for you." Genie is me. My full name is Genevieve, thanks to my Francophile mother, but since hardly anyone could pronounce it to her satisfaction, Genie had stuck. I had my mother to thank for present company. Amy, born as Amy, but she'd said goodbye to that spelling before the ink on her marriage certificate had dried and she'd left the United States behind, had recently remarried after a long widowhood. While she was enjoying her honeymoon, she'd left me in charge of her cat Cleo in the darling villa in her hometown of Cobblewood Cove. There, murder and mayhem had entered my life, and with them my great-great-aunt. Ghost and cat had struck up a fast friendship the moment they clapped eyes on each other. My mother had been a little hurt that her cat appeared to prefer my company to hers when she returned, but since she was oblivious to Adriana's presence, I decided to keep quiet about the real reason. Our absence should be enough to repair their bond anyway. Originally, I had hoped that Aimee would connect with Adriana the same way I did, and she could come to some sort of timeshare arrangement with looking after the family ghost. It didn't work that way, though. For whatever reason, she materialized for me. Blood relationship was not the only key. Objects, however, played a part, which brought us to our 2-week stay in Italy. This wasn't a holiday. Adriana and I were a team on a mission. We had traveled all the way from New England to chase her old belongings, because as far as we were aware, they held the secret to stabilizing and strengthening her in her current form. The clothes she wore, her jewelry, and an original brick from the Darling Villa in Cobblewood Cove, where Adriana had taken both her first and last breath, were all connected to her peculiar spectral life force. It had been a stroke of luck when we discovered that her parents had donated some of her clothes back in 1929 to a young woman. Said recipient had gone on from being brainy but not blessed with wealth to a scholarship in England, a career as a scientist, and marriage to Lord Taverner, a peer of the realm. Among a townhouse in London and a home in Scotland, the Taverners also possessed a villa in Italy. The second stroke of luck was the fact that the descendants of Lady Taverner had decided to put some of her stuff up for auction, and that I'd already signed up as a jewelry making tutor on a cruise ship. If 5 days at sea and teaching a bunch of mature ladies and an historian in his 40s counted as a cruise. Still, in return, I got free board and 3 meals a day, so who was I to complain? The dogs traveling with us had lined up to fill in the Cleo-shaped hole in Adriana's heart. As a result, we, or rather I, became volunteer dog walkers. I now officially owned a sash naming me the most popular crew member. The voyage also gave us opportunity to work on our communication and on boundaries. Gone were the days when I looked like a crazy person because I was talking to what seemed to everyone else to be thin air, and Adriana now let me sleep instead of waking me whenever something excited her. I gazed at her. She and her new feline friend lounged on the sofa. The little tabby yawned at me, curled into a ball, and settled in for a nap. Adriana played with the fringe of her shawl. She'd been surprisingly quiet since our arrival on Italian soil. Up to then, I could rely on her enthusiasm for everything new to keep her cheerful and chatty. That had even been the case when our ship and its human passengers didn't live up to her expectations. Honestly, I couldn't blame her for being a little disappointed. I'd seen pictures of ocean liners in the late 1920s, and they were as far removed from today's run-of-the-mill ships as were the silk frocks and tails of the era of the spandex and shorts most modern passengers preferred. After Adriana's initial attempts to join me in every lesson and searching for a handsome man to set me up with, she'd been happy to walk the dogs with me or stay in our cabin and listen to the Jeeves and Wooster novels as audiobooks. I gave my relative a fond smile. It must have been hard for my vivacious great-great-aunt to restrain herself from my state during our trip over. Although she still seems to do, maybe too much so. What's up with you? I asked. I felt the first stirrings of worry. What if the change in location didn't agree with her and her recent inactivity had deeper causes? Adriana had such a strong bond with her birthplace that we hadn't considered how a distance of more than 3,000 miles might affect her. I studied her from under my lashes. Did her skin appear less glowing, her hair less glossy, her body less real? I reached for her arm and touched her. For a heartbeat, I could feel the skin contact, which was a good sign. What was not a good sign was her lack of response. Adriana loved to talk, no matter the circumstances, although she had her merits as a good listener. Tell me, I begged her. She turned away from the window in a slow, languid movement instead of her accustomed whirling. I wish Belle was here. My heart sank. Poor Adriana. She and her older sister Belle had been the closest of friends right until she died. No wonder she found me wanting as a substitute on her first overseas trip. Being not technically alive didn't help either. What would she have wanted you to do? I asked. Adriana pondered. A tiny crease appeared in her forehead. What do people do for fun around here? Since I had read up about Livorno, I had a few ideas. We could go for a walk on the promenade or explore Little Venice. It's a really old quarter with lots of small canals and supposed to have been created by using the same methods the Venetians employed. There's also a ruin of a fortress dating back to the Medici. I could feel Adriana's eyes glaze over. No ancient ruins for her, then. I couldn't blame her. I also was a lot more attracted by her time period, although I resisted adopting Adriana's fashions. Her slinky evening dress oozed old Hollywood glamour, which was perfect for her, while jeans and shirts worked for me. When it came to Genie Darling designs, though, they were heavily influenced by the Jazz Age, Art Deco, and Art Nouveau, and I'd planned this trip around museum collections and antique shops. The cat's eyes fluttered open. Adriana petted her. The tabby shut her eyes in bliss and purred like a Hoover. Come on, I said, it'll be fun. Your first night in Bella Italia. What about the cat? She's hungry. The tabby licked her lips. We'll bring her home a few treats, if she's happy to wait on the balcony. Although the auction where Lady Treverner's belongings would go under the hammer was to be held in the Tuscan city of Montepulciano, where Milady's grandchildren had done some spring cleaning before putting the house on the market, we wouldn't travel on until tomorrow. She said she wants chicken breast. Fine with me. Adriana fussed with her perfectly coiffed hair, and I changed into a fresh pair of jeans. I watched Adriana closely as we set out. If her languid manner continued, I needed to rethink our plans and head back home with her as soon as I could. I'd never forgive myself if the energy that kept her going fizzled out forever. I'd worried unduly. As soon as we were surrounded by palm trees, bars, and the buzz of happy people soaking in the balmy air and beauty all around us, she perked up with every step. We had barely made it to the promenade where the black and white checkerboard pavement delighted Adriana so much she skipped from stone to stone when she froze mid-jump. Her lips formed a surprised circle. I had to force myself to breathe. What on earth had happened to her? Would she dematerialize before my very eyes and enter the afterlife or whatever waited at this stage of her existence?